Right now it is the 25th of March 2020, and if you're watching this far into the future, just Google what was happening in March 2020 and you'll see all about it. So, since we're all confined to our rooms and we're all minimizing our outside contact to the world, I thought this would be a fun little time to kind of reflect about all of the things that happened in my life leading up to my 26th birthday, which is actually tomorrow. And the thing is, before I became like a freelance videographer, which is what I am now, I always had like a bit of a hobby where I would carry around the camera with me and just like kind of like summarize my thoughts, summarize my little adventures, things that were going on in my life at the time. And I never published this footage because this was something that I did for myself. It was just like a little visual diary that I kept. But I thought, you know what, now looking back, it would be cool to do this kind of like big reflection and to see the decisions that I made back in the day that actually brought me to where I am here right now. And it could be maybe a bit of a fun case study for for any of the younger people out there watching and kind of like feeling maybe a bit lost in terms of what they're doing with their life. Without further ado, let's just jump into it. Okay, so the story starts in the autumn of 2015. I have just graduated university. I studied in the south of England in a small town, and I lived with my parents, so I never like had my own place. So moving into the big city, arguably the best city in the world, and having my own place, or actually my own room in a place, and well, having my own sort of disposable income, if you will, and living in the big city. I remember back then I really lived paycheck to paycheck. So I was doing everything in my power to save money. I was cycling to and from work. This is my office. Despite studying law, I actually ended up working. My first job was in media, and I was a sales guy. So I was on the phone and I was pitching a lot. And the good thing about that is that it really taught me how to negotiate and sell to people that, in my mind, I perceived to be like, I don't know, more senior. But yeah, that was really good as a confidence builder and something that did develop me a lot. I remember for the first 6-7 months of that job, I was really happy because the amount of self-development and growth that I had internally was really good. But the first kind of lull came in the summer of 2016. I remember like just being on my lunch break and just really thinking that is this it? Because at that point, after being in London for like 8 months, the routine really started to like sink in, and I didn't like that. I was questioning myself. But something that really got me out of that mentality and really kicks me back into the hustle mode was when I had my first business trip and we went to Washington, DC. And we were there for a conference, but we were able to take a few days holiday. And I actually jumped on this like 3 a.m. train from DC and I got to New York. And it was autumn. This was September 2016. This was my first time in New York City. I remember seeing Times Square. I remember seeing Manhattan, the skyline, and I was so amazed. I was like, wow, this place is inspirational. I love the energy here. I love the vibe. And I remember back then thinking that like, okay, all I want to do now is that I want to travel and I just want to see as many of these different places in the world as possible. So when I returned to London, this is now winter 2016. I remember I tried to downscale even more. So even though beforehand I was living a pretty frugal lifestyle and I was trying to cut back on all my expenses. But then I really made a target. I remember downloading this app. I had this app on my phone called Money Manager, not sponsored. But yeah, I used to like key in and I used to like document all of my expenses, every little bit that I used to spend money on. And the other thing that I did is I moved into a place that was even smaller than my first room that I had in London. And this was like a tiny room. It was literally just my bed, my little table. And this thing cost me £607 per month. And this was fairly central. This is like, walking distance from like, Liverpool Street. Yeah, the target really then was, as I was coming into 2017, was to save money. I wanted to save £10,000 by the end of 2017 and also to have a budget aside where I can go off and travel and do stuff. And I remember really like, knuckling down and just like really like concentrating on that and having those goals. My life then was like routine, like work, gym, go out a little bit, but not splash out and continue basically and repeat. And in April 2017, this was spring now, I did my first like solo trip. And I remember I traveled, I had this idea of traveling around Europe, but I wanted to kind of visit the different parts of Europe. So my idea was to fly from London to Stockholm, see kind of Scandinavia, then take a ferry to Estonia, to Tallinn, see the Baltics, and then from there fly to Vienna, Austria, see kind of Central Europe, and then from there the final destination would be to fly to Barcelona to see kind of like the Spanishy, now Latina Europe, if you will. And yeah, all along this journey, I was like document like as well. Like I had a little GoPro that I bought. Actually, the first purchase that I made with my first salary was a GoPro. It was a basic level entry GoPro, and yeah, I was documenting all of this stuff, and I had fun doing it. I really like this. Still, I look back, and this is one of the best trips I've ever done. I think the first time you travel solo by yourself is literally amazing. You get mind blown because you're there on your road yourself. You meet great people, and you have cool adventures. I came back to London that summer, and that summer I spent in London, and it was good. I made the most of it, I feel, but the blues kind of still kicked in. I was thinking, how do I engineer my life that I'm able to be on the road essentially and not need to be in a routine, because the routine was something that I really started to despise at that point. The other thing that happened is towards autumn 2017, I hit my target. So with all the frugal lifestyle that I was doing, I finally got my £10,000 saved up, which for me at the time was a big deal because I was like 23, 24. And I was really thinking like, wow, this is a lot of money. And it made me confident, like overconfident. And a funny thing happened. I quit my job. I walked into the office and I literally quit on the spot. And the day that I quit, my best friend from university, the guy that I studied with, he actually moved into London. So he finished his master's and his year in industry, which I didn't do because I'm lazy. And he actually moved to London, and he had the same kind of spark and the same energy in his eyes that I used to have when I first moved in there. And he told me, he's like, look, man, we can't just like live our life for memories. We have to build something. We were both at the time like in the kind of Gary Vaynerchuk fantasy of hustle nonstop and like build something, create something. And we decided to knuckle down together and basically build a blog for guys, basically looking at younger people and kind of helping them, giving them advice on like confidence, public speaking. We thought we were good at that. We thought that we can do it. And we both decided to create a little personal brand. And that was good. We worked on that very, very hard in the autumn of 2017. I then kind of got a little bit too depressed and I started to like literally run away from life, because at that point I could kind of see my savings that I worked so hard on building being depleted every single day. And I still couldn't get a job at that time. I was interviewing to all these like fancy offices that I was trying to do and go to. And but I just kept getting rejected. I wasn't getting any feedback. And so in November 2017, I had this little trip. This was a tiny little trip that I had planned to go to Nice, to France. And it was supposed to be 4 days. And this trip ended up being quite crazy because I got to see Nice. And as I was on the bus going to the airport, I found out from an email 2 things. First of all, the job that I was interviewing for, again, I got rejected. And second of all, that our flight to go to London was actually cancelled. And I remember that day I did like the craziest thing that I've done so far. Instead of going to London from Marseille on a different aircraft, I decided to just basically I bought a ticket at the airport right then and there. I was running away from life. I was like, look, get me out of here. I don't want to go back to London. Where is the cheapest flight that you have? I didn't want to stay in Marseille, so I ended up going to Barcelona. And I was already there earlier that year, but I just wanted to come back again because Barcelona was amazing. It was, after New York, it's my second favorite city. I got to see Barcelona again. From there, I decided to hop on another flight to Madrid, then to Porto, to Portugal. And it was really fun. Lots of cool people, lots of cool memories. Ended up in Morocco, in Marrakesh. And actually, my mate Blue joined me. And we were exploring Morocco together. We were going from Marrakesh to Casablanca. And then from there to Rabat. I ended up getting really bad food poisoning. You can't really see any of this footage, but I was really suffering on this train journey. I was like, oh man, I was not feeling well at all. It was reheated rice. Don't have reheated rice in Morocco. Anyway, coming back into England, this was like now very end, December 2017. I actually had some amazing news. So one of the interviews that I went through that actually initially rejected me, then changed their mind and told me that actually I am gonna get the job. So I was coming back to London and I had a job lined up. I was really happy because I was gonna like make back all the money that I lost, running away from life. And also we were working really long hours to build up our other YouTube page, our blog, our articles and stuff. And actually, I didn't know it back then, but 2018 was probably like the year that I ended up working the hardest in my life, because I was working a 9 to 5. Then I was coming back. I was meeting my mate. We were sitting in a late night cafe, hustling, working on creating blogs, working on creating content. It was a lot of experience. It was good experience, but it kind of drove me a little bit insane because I literally didn't have a social life back then. It was all focused on work, work, work. Also, that year, 2018, we had really shit weather. It was the beast from the east, and it was like snowing in like late February, which was ridiculous for London. It never happens. And at the time, I was getting me quite depressed as well. This was also the time when I then ended up buying a first proper mirrorless camera. I bought a little Panasonic G7, and I was like practicing my little photography, videography skills. Back then, still, I couldn't imagine myself doing this professionally. I was like, nah, I'm just doing it as a hobby. But every opportunity that I had to go out and practice, whether it was to shoot some video or to like shoot some whatever snow, I would do that. And summer that year was less of a highlight than 2017. I traveled again to Europe. I went to Riga and Budapest this time, and I was trying to create some cinematic cool video by putting some black bars and a little bit of teal and orange color grade. But it was all a learning curve. The really good news of 2018 that happened is in the summer, our hard work with the blog and the content that we were doing with my mate, it finally paid off. We finally landed a paid client, a guy that wanted to pay us money to learn from us, to learn kind of like a little course that we put together. And, we were both mind blown because at the time we were both like 24. Well, I was 24, my mate is 26 at the time. And we were both thinking, well, like, wow, we both, for the first time in our lives, made money online, outside of the 9 to 5 sphere. And we were both like, this is amazing. So we did that, and that was a massive learning curve as well. Later that year, I actually met a girl, fell in love with her, and the business that we had going with me and my mate, that actually came to a full stop, because at that point I had zero time to work on that with him. Also, because we were working so hard on that together, we kind of started to drive a wedge between us, because it was just too much time spent with each other. We started to like argue, we started to quarrel about things that we would never quarrel about, and eventually we decided to give it a break, so we stopped. And 2019, of course, the year started off with the same promises. I was like, this is going to be good, this year's going to be different. But hey, like, I actually kind of started to enjoy for the first time this routine again of like, going to work, coming back, doing gym, spending time with a girlfriend, and it was really fun. Everything seems nice and casual and on track, and I was like, I tried to have a crazy life, didn't work. Now I'm gonna go to my normality and living a normal 9 to 5 and enjoying it. But then something happened. So in February 2019, just over a year ago, I actually was given notice that I was being let go from my job. And I was thinking back then, you know what, maybe this is a sign, maybe this is another reason that I should not give up on my dreams just yet, and actually pursue, creating my own business or my own brand, or doing something that I never dreamt of doing before. And one of my other friends, he is also a bit of an adventurer. He then said he had a crazy idea of us both traveling to New York, because New York is still our favorite city. He was like, look, let's go to New York and let's actually be more than tourists and actually live there for 2 months. And I was really scared, because I was like, man, I've just been fired. Like, I still have savings, but like not that much, this is not a good idea. But I did it anyway. I was like, okay, fine, we're gonna go to New York. So we both go to New York. I ended up staying for a month only. My mate was there for 2 months. And a very interesting thing happened. So in New York, I met this artist. She was a British artist who's like a painter. And she was doing an exhibition in New York. She was looking for somebody to video her content, to just basically help her make a video. And from all of the skills that I kind of learned on the side when I was like creating the little blog thing with my friends and everything, I was like, yeah, I can bosh something together and see if that works. And she was like, yeah, come on, let's do it. So we met up, and I documented behind the scenes. And then it was a crazy thing, because it's almost like the answer was always there in front of me. I was thinking that like, this is kind of easy. Why don't I just become like a videographer? And there's loads of other companies and people that need video content. Why don't I just try doing that? Let's give it a shot. So that spring, it was late spring, I came back to England. I took the humble move of moving back in with my parents. Thanks, mom and dad. And I started to work on my personal brand. And at the time, I had very, very little experience. Like, I never went to film school. Everything that I learned, I pretty much learned from YouTube. And I kind of knew the basics. And I was like, you know what? I'm still going to give it a shot. I know that if I speak about this in a professional enough fashion, people will listen. So I ended up making this little trailer where I kind of explained the necessity of video content in today's day and age. Put that together, put that on my LinkedIn page, reached out to the people that I used to work with, reached out to the other people that kind of know me, and I really started to like speak with them and open conversations just to see whether they would even consider, working with me. And also for the remainder of that year, 2019, I was really working on like every other trip that I went to with friends. Then I started to like really concentrate on like my framing my shots, color grading my videos, doing some sound design. Basically, like at that point, I really started to like put in the effort to really think about my shots and composition and everything to have something to show for, and pretty much, yeah, I used that and also just my ability of sales, the skill that I learned in my first job to speak with people and to hopefully convince them to work with me. And a couple of good things happened. So in the summer of 2019, I did actually managed to land quite a few corporate gigs where I would go and shoot events and seminars, and that was really good because it gave me the good exposure, and also it gave me some experience, and there was a whole bunch of like early mornings that I had to do, and I was like waking up a ridiculous time to make it into London by like 8 a.m. so I can document and shoot the event. That was really fun. I wouldn't have it any other way. So there was a whole bunch of these things that happened. And then, getting towards the end of 2019, unfortunately, being away from London, that really took a toll on my relationship. So it didn't work out in the end, unfortunately. But eventually, all of the experience that I kind of managed to harvest during the end of 2019, it really gave me the confidence to save up again enough money to move back into London, to then try to live from here and to reach out to even more clients, to do even more event videos, and to really like brand myself within this niche. So that was basically wrapping up 2019, and now 2020, the first 3 months have literally been about that, really focused about being back in the city, chasing clients, and making things happen with event videos and working on my personal brand, which is great because I've never had that before. I've always like been relying on corporations and the boss to like you enough to pay your salary and not fire you. But yeah, that's been the story looking back at the 5 years of my life in my early 20s, and now I am officially kind of like in my mid/late 20s, so hooray. But yeah, it's been a really fun last 5 years, and obviously now with the whole doom and gloom happening in the world with the what, it's a good time to self-reflect. It's a good time to see what else is the decisions that I have made, that you have made. Perhaps you've been able to see yourself somewhat in this video, in all of this content. But the idea that I wanted to get across to you is that, look, it's not always a linear path to success, If you would ask me 5 years ago if I could ever see myself as somebody who would shoot content for corporate companies, I would be like, absolutely not, because my background was different, my study was different. I even thought that I would never like the process of shooting and editing. I was like, that kind of sounds boring. But hey, it's one of those things that I got to love more and more through experience. And the more I was doing it, the better I kind of became at it. And it's, in a way, it kind of like really, pushed me into this niche more and more. So yeah, I hope you found this somewhat useful and fun to look back on my life with me, and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video.